Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to day 5 of the Ask to Win Challenge. Welcome to day 5 of the Ask to Win Challenge. My name remains Olatunji Shobodu, and I have been your anchor from the very first day of this challenge. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the faith and, hopefully the last day, at least for the challenge. Again, this is the VIP segment. We start an hour before the general segment. And by way of, a recap, the VIP segments have been essentially case study driven. We have from one day to the next, looked at specific case studies, basically exploring to some depth the concepts relating to the ask and how in different situations you can leverage the privilege and the power of asking to win. And so here we are on day 5. Again, still on the recap, we started out talking about the ask as that one insight that you need to change your life and to end lack. And the first day we focused on ask for what you can't get on your own. And the discussion was centered around fulfillment in the main. And on day 2, we looked at ask for what's impossible to give, what might be impossible to give. And we talked about the issue of entitlement. We talked there about the issue of entitlement. On the first day, our case study was the rich young ruler. On the second day, our case study was the Shunammite woman who went to the prophet, to the king, to ask for her land back after she returned from famine. On day 3, it was ask for what you need to serve others. And the case study there was, none other than the wisest man himself, Solomon. And there was where we began to see the privilege extended, the blank check extended, as it were. And it gave us the opportunity to clarify, that particular aspect, that don't wait until somebody gives you a blank check today, because you already have a blank check by way of a subsisting principle, that the ask is a principle. And once you have a principle, it's for you to understand how it works and to take advantage of it. And then yesterday, we looked at ask for what you admire in your leader. So we brought the leader into focus as one of the most important sources that we need to look at if we want to capitalize on, this ask privilege. And so the case study was the relationship and what transpired between Elijah and Elisha. And we saw there again where Elisha was given the blank check, almost like Solomon was given the blank check. Ask for what I shall do for you was almost verbatim, in those two instances. Today, we are looking at ask for what gets you out of a jam. Ask for what gets you out of a jam. Ask for how, you can get out of trouble, or you can get out of a tight corner, or how you can get out when you have your back against the wall. And this is important And one of the ways to appreciate the importance of this is if you cast your mind back to the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray. That prayer is one of the things I believe that many of us also have taken for granted. We have, we have gotten so used to it that that we don't even believe that it, has that much power, if any. Because I doubt that, we pray it, and if we do, it ends up being more like a benediction, all right, something you do at the end, and so it's not often not taken seriously. But I mean, you can think about it. How does somebody of the stature and the status of Jesus teach you, a prayer, and you regard it as one that is not powerful? Okay, except for the fact that you just want to undermine yourself. Okay. But the last aspect of that prayer is lead us not into temptation, or sorry, deliver us from evil. Deliver us from evil. So there's an aspect of it where it says lead us not into temptation. That is a preemptive one. So you don't, if you are tempted and you can't rise above it, then you probably would fall. Then you are boxed into a corner. And when you are boxed into a corner, the next prayer you want to pray is, please get me out of here. All right, deliver us from evil. So from the point of view of the fact that, a prayer involves asking, then you can see the importance of asking to get out of the jam. So that's why we're looking at this dimension today. Ask for what gets you out of a jam. Ask for help. Ask for help. Many times when people get into difficulty or when they get into a jam, they often need somebody to help them out. They often need somebody to pull them out. Okay. So you have to ask. You have to ask. Now, our case study for today is the story of Joseph. Is the story of Joseph. We'll be looking at Joseph today, and we'll be looking at, Genesis 40. And, I just want to illustrate from the encounter that transpired between Joseph and the butler and the baker. All right. We all know what Joseph's challenge was. His challenge was that, he had a glorious destiny. He had a great future. He was a dreamer. He had the privilege of being shown what his tomorrow would look like, even if he didn't know the details of it. He was a bit naive because, he didn't keep it to himself. He thought that everybody around him would be excited for him, so he shared those details. And one thing led to the other. It turns out that the very members of his household were the ones who couldn't stand, the bright prospects that he had painted. And so they did all manner of things, wanted to eliminate him. When they couldn't succeed, they sold him off. Then he ended up in one man's house, in a pretty, in an army official's house. They call his name Potiphar. And everything seemed to go well for him until something came up again. And, the wife of Potiphar was after him, and he had to get out of there. In doing that, he got into trouble because he was then accused of rape, as it were. Now, and that landed him in prison. Okay, that landed him in prison. So he was incarcerated. And while he was there, he met some people And he had these two guys, the baker and the butler of Pharaoh, of the king, who had been sent into the prison as a punishment as well. So somehow their paths crossed. And so one day, these fellows had dreams, almost at the same time over one night. And, Joseph was the dreamer. He was the one who could interpret dreams. He had that gift. He had that gift. Please take note of that he had that gift. He was a man with a gift. And that gift, was called upon in that his difficulty. And so these men didn't understand. They were fearful of their dreams. But then they decided, the first one decided to share it, and he shared the dream, which was the butler, shared the dream with Joseph, and Joseph gave him the interpretation of the dream. And his interpretation was positive, that he was going to be restored within 3 days or thereabout. And then the other man, the baker, was encouraged to share his dream as well. But he didn't get a positive interpretation. He was told, well, your situation is dire, and it may lead to death, because when you are called back, Pharaoh may not spare your life. And so that is what he did. He helped both of them. He was in a difficulty, but he had the privilege to help others who also had a challenge. Those fellows knew their dreams were not ordinary. They knew that their dreams had, very significant implications for their lives. And if they couldn't get somebody to help them, that was really a position of difficulty. So, but luckily they did. And so they asked. The first one, the butler, reached out, and asked. Although it was Joseph who saw their countenance, and knew that something was bothering them, and he gave them the privilege to ask, what's it? And then the first one told his dream, and then the second one too was encouraged because he had seen the first, and especially because, Joseph's interpretation to the dream of the butler was positive. So again, you can see the dynamics in all of that of asking. You can see the dynamics of asking. So one derived boldness to ask because he saw somebody else who had asked, and because he saw that that person got a positive response. So again, we see how seeing some other person leverage successfully the privilege to ask, we see how it can embolden us, how it can encourage us, and how it can get us, to step forward and take advantage or attempt to take advantage ourselves. One of the other ways that you can look at that is that even if you were looking at yourself, when you have a track record or you have a string of successes with asking, it encourages you, it emboldens you. Okay, so it's good that one applies himself, in this regard, so that you can have successes, because the more successful you are, it's an indication that your skill in utilizing this privilege is growing, and that can encourage you to keep at it and to keep improving. So you have that catalyst sort of effect. Now, There is one thing that Joseph then did here. One of the most instructive things that took place in this interaction was that Joseph then said to the men, after he had interpreted their dreams, in closing, he made a request. He made a request. He invoked the privilege to ask. He invoked the privilege to ask. In Genesis 40 and verse 14, this was what he said. He said, but think on me when it shall be well with you, and show kindness, I pray, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. That house, he was referring to a prison. Or if you like, bring me out of this jam. Bring me out of this, my precarious situation. He said, gentlemen, you know what I've done? I've helped you guys. I've given what you requested. I've supplied your need, which in this case is the interpretation of your dream. I've supplied your need. All right, the needs of both of you. Now let me ask, I also have a need. I also have a need. And so I'm asking you not to forget me, to remember me. And when you get back to Pharaoh, because that's where you guys operate, and from your dreams, obviously you are going back there. When you get back to Pharaoh, remember me and put in a word for me. Make mention of me. All right, so that to Pharaoh, so that he can bring me out of here, so that I can be rescued from this jam. So you can see why this is our case study today. You can see why it is important. You can see why we are concerned, about asking for what gets you out of a jam, because it's serious business. One of the things that you and I would ask for, one of the needs we would have at times in life, at some point or the other, is a need to be rescued from a jam. If you remember what we discussed yesterday, we said some things along that line. Some of the easiest things to ask for is the rescue from a challenge. Why is that so? Because it's incorporated in the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray. There's no prayer that can be more powerful than that prayer. And there are priorities in that prayer. If he told us to ask for them, they're the easiest thing we can ask for and be sure that we're going to get. Why? Because he himself taught us that that's what to pray about. In Luke 11, his disciples asked him, he said, sir, teach us to pray. And he looked at them and said, when you pray, meaning that you are going to need to pray about these needs. And we know that when we pray, what we're dealing with are needs. Hebrews 11 tells us that. Hebrews 4 and verse 16. He said, let us come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help at our time of need. That means the reason that we're coming to the throne is so that we can have our needs met. So that we can have our needs met. It's clearly stated there. That's why we are coming to the throne. And the one who gave us that invitation, knows that that's why. That's what he asked us to come and collect. He said, I'm concerned about your needs. I know that you would have needs, is a part of life. All right. But I've also made provision for those needs to be met. And what are those needs? What are the principal needs, which is why they are the easiest to access? He said, give us this day our daily bread. So wisdom, because bread is both your basic needs and wisdom. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. What word proceeds out of the mouth of God? Wisdom. Wisdom. And Solomon said, get wisdom is the principal thing. Okay. Number two, forgiveness. All right. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. It means that we're going to make mistakes and we will have need for our mistakes to be overlooked. We will have need. And by the way, we would have that need with God and with men. Because if you offend me, if you do something against me, then I can hold it against you. All right? But because you know that it's important to live in peace with everyone as much as it lies within your power, because you know that it's important that you maintain a good relationship with others, a lot of what we discussed yesterday, you want to make sure that even when you hurt me, you repair it. You don't allow it to linger. And to repair it, you need me to forgive you. Okay. That's number two. Number three was to say that lead us not into temptation. So I need guidance, I need direction so that I don't miss my way, so that I don't get into trouble. All right. And number four was deliver us from evil. They're the easiest things to ask for. If you're asking for anything outside of those, well, maybe you won't be as confident that you will get them as you would be with these ones, because these ones, the one who taught us to ask, the one who gave the principle in Luke 11, 9 to 10, this is what he taught us to ask for. So we need to talk about it. We need to draw attention to it. We need to be mindful of what to do in order to get out of the jam. Yes, we don't want to get out into a jam, into a difficulty, but what if we do? We need help to get out of it. We need help to get out of it. The way it was, Joseph, he didn't see how he was going to get out of that place. But the moment that he came in touch with these guys, that he knew they were from Pharaoh, the moment, notice, that he saw that he was in a position to be of help to them, he didn't miss that opportunity. He saw a position to build goodwill, to do good first, to give first. That these fellows are close to Pharaoh. And I have this gift. I'm in a position to help. I know the interpretation to their dreams. So if I help them, aren't I positioning myself to access the help that I also need? In this particular case, he knew exactly what help he needed. He needed for somebody who was powerful, who was more powerful than his own, the person that put him there, the Potiphar that put him there, was just a captain. But these guys had connections to Pharaoh. He didn't play down. Please take notice. He did not play down these fellows like some of us will do. He didn't consider that, what will a baker do? Maybe the person works in the kitchen. What will a butler do? Is he not just serving, Pharaoh? What can these ones do? They don't have any connections. He didn't. He didn't underrate them. He didn't see himself as being above being helped by these people. Some people, they box themselves into a corner because they play down the significance of others. Some people will never ask these fellows because, they work in the kitchen of Pharaoh, basically. But Joseph understood that no one is to be written off. on the basis of any flimsy reason. No one is to be written off in that manner, which would be pride on the part of the one who needs help. You never know, perhaps who needs help. The fact that these guys are in Pharaoh's employ means that, they could be pretty powerful. I mean, if somebody is handing the cup to Pharaoh, and if somebody is making Pharaoh's food on a daily basis, chances are that they have an opportunity to speak directly to Pharaoh. Chances are that when they are able to get in a word, it might just provoke or prompt Pharaoh to call for him. So when you look at this case study, there's a lot that we can talk about here. Let me try and close it so that we can brainstorm. So what happened? We're told the last verse of that was, when you read the story down, it's what he predicted. The interpretation he gave was actually what transpired. So after 3 days, Pharaoh called these two men. He restored one, the butler, and he ordered for the baker to be hung, just like Joseph had interpreted. But that last verse says, yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. So if we're talking about this, that's something that I expect somebody to raise, here and say, but wait a minute, yes. I mean, perhaps it's not quite a good case study because, yes, Joseph maybe he asked the wrong set of people. Maybe they couldn't help after all. Maybe Joseph was desperate. And so he didn't really think about, who he was asking, because in the end, they didn't even remember him. And that can be a source of discouragement, again, for some of us. And you probably, have experienced that, where you have done good to somebody in the past, and when they were in a position to help you, to provide for your need, they failed. They disappointed you. They betrayed you. All right? But let's not forget that at that moment, yes, they forgot Joseph. But a time came, they remembered him. The same people remembered him. I mean, quite frankly, the baker could not have remembered Joseph because he was eliminated. So the only person who could truly have remembered Joseph was the butler. But after a while, we're told in Genesis 41 that Pharaoh now had a dream. But guess who remembered Joseph at that time? It was the butler. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't anybody else. So you could say at that time when the guys faced their various verdicts, they didn't remember him. But ultimately, they remembered him. Ultimately, they remembered him. That's an aspect we don't often pay attention to. And why did they remember him at that time? It was still because he mentioned to them, don't forget me, some time ago. It was because, I mean, if he had not mentioned to them, maybe even when Pharaoh had the dream, the butler may still not mention his name. The butler may not mention his name. So the butler still remembered him. He just didn't remember him at the time that Joseph was expected. But one thing led to the other there. Did he get out of the jam or he didn't get out of the jam? He got out of the jam. How did he get out of that jam? Yes, God gave him favor. Yes, all of that. But the truth is that he sowed a seed. He took an action. He asked for these guys not to forget him. He expressed his desire to be brought into the house of Pharaoh. Maybe while he was even asking them, and almost certainly while he was asking them, he never imagined that he would become the second in command. He didn't imagine. He just wanted to get out of where he was. And he saw that getting into Pharaoh, by asking the butler, and he was gunning that, from here, I might just be able to move into Pharaoh's place. I mean, whatever position you hold in the household of Pharaoh or in the employment of Pharaoh was going to be better than where he was, and was certainly going to be better than when he was also in Potiphar's house. I mean, in this case, he was going to be, in the Aso Rock, or it was going to be, in that equivalent, in Egypt. And there is no small position there. Everybody is influential there. There are privileges, okay, to be enjoyed. So what's the point that I'm making? If he did not ask, he may never have gotten there. If he didn't say to those fellows, remember me, get me out of this jam. I need help to get out of here. Even when God created the environment, he may never have been able to take advantage of it. Yesterday, and I want to thank Chiso again for what she shared with us yesterday. And in a sense, this may apply as well to what, Biola shared with us yesterday. But one of the things that took place when Chiso and I had that, interaction was she was asked to do one or two things. Okay. And she took those steps. So it's like she reached out. Okay. She took responsibility. She asked, as it were. All right. And a lot of what transpired thereafter can be traceable to that gesture. What if she had not asked? What if she hadn't made the move? Even if God has set her up for an upgrade, the fact that she holds back or held back would have worked against her. There is what you must do, there is what God will do. Like we said much earlier in the session, the one who needs to do what he needs to do has already provided the principle. It's for us to learn the principle and to put it to work. And then it is for him to confirm that the principle works. It's like it's some kind of division of labor. All right? Some kind of division of labor. So here we see the dynamics of ask in a relatively different setting, in a relatively different kind of need. And one of the things you would find is that it worked for Joseph. We read it where he asked. He said, guys, think of me. He's asked to say, remember me. Some other interpretation will say, remember me when it is well with you. When you guys get out of here, remember me. When you get in front of Pharaoh, remember me. Let him, tell him, put in a word for me, let him get me out of here. That's asking. It's a request that he put before them. And that request was granted. The timing may have been different from what his expectation was, but the request was granted. Not only was it granted, he got far more than he bargained for. He never imagined what took place. I mean, he just barely wanted to get out of this mess. He just wanted, you know, this situation of injustice to be addressed or redressed. If somebody had told him, and he didn't even dream about it, interestingly, if somebody had told him that, wait a minute, this is what is likely to happen, he would have said, look, I just need to get out of here. That one is far-fetched. To become Pharaoh's number 2, to be the one put in charge of everything, for his word to be final. No, that's not what he was thinking of. So again, we see that this thing has a tendency to put into our hands much more than we ask for. It seems to be an interesting aspect of, you know, of this principle. And interesting because it's also the way that God works. All right? It's the way that God works. Whenever you are in need and God wants to, you know, and you would take the step, you know, he wants to provide more than you actually need. That's why you plant a seed, and what you get back is not one seed, it's not even one fruit. What you get back is a host of fruits, each one having more seeds than what you planted in the first instance. So that's how this principle works. That's how this principle works. If you look at that statement in Isaiah 61, verse 7, it says, for your shame, you will have double. It's like saying, for your need, you will have double. For your lack, expect double. Expect double. That is, there would always be more than you are expecting. Except you don't believe. Or except you don't understand how the principle works. Which is part of why exposure to these 5 days is important. Because beyond being challenged to lay hold on this privilege and to experience its power, your attention is being drawn to what you may have been losing. Olumide said that yesterday, but that we're losing. For each occasion that you pass on the opportunity to do this, you are losing far more than you know. Why? Because of this principle, you are losing far more. Every time you have a seed and you decide not to do anything with it, guess what's happening? You lose far more. It's not the seed that you have lost. You have lost all the harvest that could come with the seed, including the seeds which could have given you an opportunity to perpetuate that process, because that's what seed time and harvest does. So a number of things, you know, come out from here. Look at how Joseph built goodwill, because he had helped the people. He saw an opportunity to help them, and he helped them. And that positioned him well to be able to ask to address his own need. All right. So you see also that there is nothing out of place when you help some people and then you have to ask them to help you. He helped them in one area, but though he was helping, he also had his own need. And then he was able to take advantage, not without considering all the factors that we've talked about before, whether the timing was right, whether he had justification, and all of that stuff. Because when you look at them, were these the right people to ask for what he was asking? They were the only people connected to Pharaoh among all the prisoners in the prison. These guys were not just connected to Pharaoh in that they worked, in Pharaoh's household. They were people who were serving. They were handing the cup, baking bread for Pharaoh. So they had close proximity. They had close interaction. They had potential to help him. He didn't ask them for anything that was out of place, that he didn't believe that they could deliver. He didn't say, look, make me the second in command or find me a job in that place. He said, put in a word and get me help out of this place. That means I just want to be out of this place. Now, if it finds me a place in Pharaoh's place, that's great. But I also know that if Pharaoh gets me out of here, wherever he puts me, it will be far better than here, at least. So some of us or some of you who help people and you then don't want to ask them for help when you know they can be of help, just because you have helped them, you are making a mistake. You are making a mistake. It's an attempt to be self-righteous. It's not wisdom. There's nothing that says, I helped you to supply your need. I also have a need, and I think that you can be helpful to me. Why should I not ask you to help me? It's part of the pride that we talked about. Why should I make an excuse for you? That I don't want you to look as if because I've helped you
because
now.
I've asked you.
Because I've helped you now I'm trying to take advantage. No, the person has what you need. The person has what you need. You have fulfilled theirs, and you have done what you needed to do. This guy gave them accurate interpretation. He couldn't have done better than he did. He served them like he would have served anybody else. And he helped them, and they found it to be true. And indeed, for what he did for them, I'm sure any one of them would have been willing, if there was a way that baker could have been helped, all right, saved from death, that baker would have been looking to anything he could do to help this guy. So it's one of the lessons that we should learn. Second, you also see it is possible that the people can forget you. But it's not something that you should now hold on to such that it prevents you from asking for help from other people. Because they may not remember you today. But it doesn't mean that something won't happen where they remember. Oh, because when that thing happened, when the Pharaoh now had a dream, it was the memory of the butler that was juggled. He said, wait a minute. Oh, what a mess. I made a mess of myself. There is this guy. I just remembered now. That's what happened. He still remembered him. He just took a different event. He may have forgotten Joseph because his own encounter overwhelmed him. Imagine him being restored, but he actually saw that his colleague, the baker, was hung, was killed. The entire experience can be overwhelming, can really be overwhelming. It can make you forget that the one Joseph existed until something else then happened. And he said, oh. And then he was quick, said, there is this guy. We need to get this guy. And how did it come about? Because it was now something that happened where the gift of that guy, the kind of help that that guy gave them, was required. So you never know. Your asking is not in vain, not because, because you haven't got the response you desired or you looked forward to at your time. All right? So maybe it wasn't time. There's a time when there'll be an answer. And from the same people. So that's another twist that I think that we should bear in mind. And then lastly, let me say this so that we can have contributions, is the gift, the role of the gift, your gift. You can see that it's relevant for meeting your needs. For meeting your needs. What was the significance of the help that Joseph was able to offer? It was the gift of dreams and interpretation that he had. It's like any skill that you have. It's like any knowledge that you have. It's like any talent that you have. It's like, what is that value that makes you you and that makes you useful for adding value to others? So when you are looking at interacting with others, when we said yesterday, some people, and day before we said, some people cannot ask because they don't even give. They don't help others. And so we said it's important to help, because when you do that, it positions you to get help the day it will come to your turn. And one of the things that empowers you to be effective at helping others is the gift that you possess. Nobody else could help these guys in the prison. Nobody else had the gift to interpret dreams. Only Joseph had. And he stepped forward. His gift made a way for him. His gift was a crucial source, empowerment to help. Some people would say, I don't have resources. I don't have this. I don't have that. It doesn't mean that you can't give. Because what some people need from you is not money. All that some people need, for example, may be a word of encouragement. All that some other people need may be a word of counsel. All that some people need may be comfort. So mind your gift and remember to use it to help others, because it will open things up for you. It could make your asking very potent in the days, in the months, in the years to come. It's one of the very important lessons here. Joseph got out of this jam because he asked. Joseph could ask because he had given. And he could give in a way that was effective because he gave based on his gift. He gave based on his gift. I hope that gets a very important message across. The floor is open. Let's have comments, please. Let's have comments. Let's have, some discussion before we get onto the general session. The floor is open.
This is a question.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that wonderful and inspiring case study. You were saying that Joseph, okay, let me rephrase myself. I was thinking that there must be a way of asking powerfully when you are not asking, when there's an intermediary between the person that can solve your problem or can directly give you that which you want. Yeah. And because the butler and his partner, they were in between. And I have a sneaky feeling that if only Joseph had asked mind-bogglingly like Elisha did, maybe it would have made a bit of a difference. So he said, remember me.
Yes.
Maybe, one of the way of asking that you share with us is to be prepared to ask clearly.
Yes.
So when he did say, remember me, maybe I'm just thinking, remember me to get me out to do this. Remember me to get me out for a particular reason. Obviously, in the king's palace, there's always seemingly, I don't know whether that's the first time, a need for interpretation of dream.
Yeah.
Maybe if he had asked specifically, powerfully for something, maybe they would have remembered him earlier than that particular time that God remembered. And if we are asking somebody, you understand, I'm just thinking, for a help that somebody else is going to be the person in authority to take care of it, maybe there should be a way of asking powerfully, clearly. I don't know.
Well, I understand the point I understand the point you are making. What I would say is that, and well, perhaps you are right to some extent, but what I would say was happening. What is clear is this: be mindful what you ask for, because what you ask for would be used as a benchmark for what you get. Will be used as a benchmark. If you at your level shortchange yourself, then of course, even though things will be added to you when it's provided, you will get more, but you will get more in relation to where you started out. Excellent. So if you raise your bar high, then you get more. Okay. That's what I would say. But what you must bear in mind is that his request was not completely out of place. Why? Because here was somebody who was basically, he felt injustice. He felt he was being cheated. He felt he was being punished for what he did not do. And so his primary desire was just to get out of that place.
Okay.
He was somebody that we understand that he was also a very diligent man. He was a very resourceful guy. Remember that when he was in Potiphar's house, Potiphar didn't pay attention to anything again because his house ran effectively. You understand?
Yes.
When he was in the prison and he was put in charge of the prison, everything ran smoothly. So here was a guy who had no issues about whether he could survive or not, whether he could do well or not. What he seemed to have an issue with was he needed to get out of that nonsense. He needed to get out of that jam. So if you come you see that he was perfect. His request was perfect. He said, put in a word for me so that, you can get me out of this jam. What he was saying is that I know that you are close to Pharaoh. I know that you have the ears and, you get to the presence of Pharaoh. I'm hoping that you can, be bold enough to mention my name to Pharaoh. And I know Pharaoh has the power to reverse this injustice, to bring me out of here. We can't say, with any certainty that he was looking to be employed in Pharaoh's, place. He said, I want to get out of this jam. The guy would have survived anywhere else. He would have done well on his own. He was that resourceful. He was that faithful. Okay? It only turned out that Pharaoh had need for him. It turned out that the whole country had a need for him. And that's why it played out.
Can I ask a question then?
What would he have asked for? Yes.
Let me ask this question.
Yes. Okay. All right.
How do you ask without being forgotten?
How do you ask without being forgotten?
Yes. You understand? Because
okay.
Let me paint a scenario for you, sir. The two people that were making the request, he clearly gave them what was going to happen. And the one that survived it, I would have thought that the last thing, instead of him being, as you suggested, overwhelmed, I felt that he should ideally have been so overwhelmed, but so happy to have survived the issue to remember properly. So I'm asking now that, is there a way that one can ask so that one doesn't get forgotten? It's just a question. Oh, eventually
it sounds in the context in which you have put it, it sounds like a hypothetical question, but it's very relevant. And the answer, we have actually dealt with it. Although you can still ask, you can still add a twist to it. The way you ask such that you are not forgotten is by being persistent. Is by being persistent. Now, the twist that you could add to this is that he obviously, if they didn't remember him, was limited in his options, to exercise the persistence. Do you understand?
Yes, because of course he's locked up somewhere. They can't remember them.
He couldn't reach them. Yeah, he would have to look for who can help me reach these fellows. All right, so he can go looking for who can help him reach, and he may come across one day somebody who can reach them, and then he find a way to remind or to send them a message or something like that. The fact that you are in the prison also doesn't mean that you cannot reach out to people, presumably. So he could also write them. But persistence, is one of the ways that you can get people to remember you. Secondly, is by the clarity of your demand, and the intensity with which you ask for it. If somebody has, if you register, all right, your request in a way that makes an impact on the person at the point that you're asking, chances are that they won't forget. Chances are that. They won't.
Sorry,
They
sir.
won't forget. Let me. Yeah. Let me. I want to take Olumide's. Let me come to you,
Olumide,
Bibi. Let me hear what Olumide has to say. I'll come back and take that. Yes, Olumide.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So,
Good evening, sir.
my own question is another dimension of asking, given all that you've said.
Yes.
Now, I've seen that not only was Joseph asking for help or he
Yes.
proposed help,
Yes.
he also had a solution. And eventually,
he had a solution. How?
in the sense that he could interpret a dream.
Yeah, he had a gift. Yeah.
He had a gift, which was a solution to somebody's problem.
Yes. Which he used at that point now.
At that point.
Yes.
So now when we look at David also.
Yeah.
When he went against Goliath, he asked the king, okay, if there's somebody who can take down this Goliath,
what are you going to give?
What? Yeah. So I'm now asking.
Yeah.
It's also an ask. And so I'm beginning to look at it that, okay, maybe having a solution along with the asking makes it easier. Or can you just go make a demand for the sheer fact that yes, you feel you are entitled to this?
What you are preempting part of what I'm going to be speaking on.
Okay, so let me wait. I'll wait then. I'll wait for that.
No. You raise a very important point. And thank you for drawing our attention to David Goliath. Thank you very much. Now, notice something about the David and David is the first. There's something attached to bringing this man down. It was the one that asked. He was like, oh, sorry for that break. in transmission. Can everybody hear me, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, sorry, I guess my internet just just misbehaved there. Okay, sorry. So I was saying that is Olumide there? Are you hearing?
Yes, sir, I can hear now. I can hear.
Yeah, that David was the one that asked. He raised the issue, is there something in this thing for me? Anyone who brings this Goliath down, what is he going to be given? It would appear that that's like a practice in his days. But assuming that it was not, it was, can we enter into some terms so that if I help in this regard, I will get something. All right. So that what I will get, I don't need to negotiate it, after the deed is done, after the job is done. And like I said, I was going to come to this in the general session, that there are times you find yourself in a situation. And let me quickly just speak to that. Look at what happened in the case of Jephthah. Jephthah in Judges chapter 11. Notice what had happened to Jephthah. He was driven out of his father's house after his father died. And he was said to be, the offspring of a harlot. They said he had no entitlement. He said, okay, no problem. And he left. Then the people got into trouble and they needed help. And he, being a man of war, like David, they sent emissaries to him to go and beg him. They said, please come and lead us and help us deal with this threat. We can't handle this, but we know that with you on our side, we have it all going for us. And what did Jephthah say? He said, do you agree that you really want me? He said, yes. He said, okay, let's settle this matter. Can we agree what I will get when God helps me and I'm able to deliver you? So let's settle it now. It's not after this thing where I've provided my help that I will now be begging you for compensation. No. Let us agree upfront. And that's what they did. In fact, it took them to a point where that agreement was made so concrete that they weren't going to have a chance to violate it. Okay, so coming to your point, just like with David, there are certain situations where you believe that you need some compensation. And it's good to have that agreement up front, such that nobody is going to turn around and start playing games. And it will be well within your right to claim what is due to you, to ask for what is due to you. At that point, what you're asking for is not subject to discussion. What you're asking for is cast in stone. What you're asking for, you must get. Otherwise, there will be consequences for the people involved. But the kings of those days were not known, to renege from agreements. They weren't known to renege from agreements. There's something I haven't had the opportunity of using the case of Herodias and the case of Herodias and the head of John the Baptist, thus far in our discussion. Because you see that at that point, yesterday I was talking about when when you add pleasure to people, is a powerful way of positioning yourself to ask effectively. And that was what happened. Remember that in the case of Herod, the daughter of Herod went to dance. Her performance was excellent. Her performance gave the father so much pleasure that the father gave her a blank check. He said, ask for anything up to half of my kingdom, you will get it. And then the girl ran to the mother. So what should I ask for? She wasn't prepared for what she got. Unlike the cases we saw, Elisha, and the other case that we discussed earlier and the mother that had been looking for an opportunity to deal with John the Baptist said, I know what you should ask for. Go and ask for the head of John the Baptist. So the kings in those days who were told, as heavy as that demand was, the king had to oblige. The king had to oblige. So there were people as bad, as evil, as irresponsible as they were men and women of their words. So that's what I would say. And some of situations like this can happen even at the workplace. It can happen in our interaction in certain situations where we may have to say that, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Perhaps a Joseph could have done the same thing. Perhaps it was a better way of doing, this thing that he asked them. But if he couldn't have made that help conditional, because this was based on what he knew. This was like a matter of life and death. He couldn't have held anything back from those fellows because lives were involved. So it wasn't quite that situation, but you can have situations in real life where you have to agree that exchange upfront, knowing that you also have a need and that need can be met through that opportunity. That's the kind of thing that David did. That's the kind of thing that David did, because what he got, he certainly needed, and he enjoyed it anyway thereafter. I hope that, I don't know whether that answers your question, Olumide, or your concern. Does that take care of it? All right. Olumide, are you still there? Okay. Let's. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say the last thing that I was saying. I think that Joseph should have strategically asked very quite clearly, because
Olumide, hold on just a moment, please. Yes. Okay. Yes, Biola. Because Joseph should have asked for more.
No. I'm asked a bit more strategically, because he knew that only one is going to survive the whole show. Obviously, the guy that was dying or is going to be dead will not be able to help him. And the other one that will survive, maybe he should have been a bit more focused. I don't know.
Biola, you have to understand that Joseph was not God, and he was not regarded as an oracle. His interpretation would have been taken as just his own view. There was no way to know whether his view was going to play out or not.
All right, sir.
Until after the 3 days. Did you understand?
Yes.
Clearly, I mean, notice that it wasn't as if those two fellows had known Joseph with that gift. They didn't wake up to run to Joseph to say, we know that you have this gift, you can interpret. It was Joseph who volunteered. When he looked at their countenance and he felt these guys, something is bothering them.
Yes, sir.
And he encouraged them. What is it? Share what you have. And they said they had a dream. I said, that's my area. You don't know that's my area. So it was for the first time. Now, they wouldn't have known whether what he would say will be fact or not. All right. It would have just been like, let's hear what he has to say. Even the second person didn't want to share it with him. The second person was like, who is this guy that we will now be telling our dreams? And the person was afraid for the dream that both of them were afraid, actually. You know, so when you look at it from that point of view, you understand.
Yeah.
You know what they say. I mean, where in this, from the south or from the west where we come from, that
yes, sir.
When death that wants to kill somebody, that came, instead of killing the person, just took off the heart of the person. That person will be perplexed. Nothing, the person can't remember anything, can't remember anybody. I mean, for some time that I escaped that, especially when you saw that they actually, I mean, you and the butler, you walk in the kitchen, you walk in the same place, you are very close. You understand? And they actually killed that person.
Yes, sir.
They actually killed that person, and here you are still alive. And then please don't forget that as human beings as well, we can be very self-centered. Because now, after a while, that overwhelm could not have been like that for 2 years, because it took 2 years before the other thing happened. All right. So you can't tell me you were overwhelmed for 2 years. What if the other thing didn't happen? You would never have remembered this guy. All that it meant was that the guy had gotten back his position. He had been reintegrated. He had become comfortable, and he had forgotten.
Because this happened quite a lot, sir, in real life.
Yeah, I mean, it does, but it does. But at the same time, I think the strongest thing to take note of is what if Joseph had not spoken?
Yes, sir.
I think that's the greatest thing. What if Joseph had not spoken? When I mentioned Chiso's case, it is so instructive when you listen to her example. What if she would ask herself, what if she had not spoken? There is a particular person that she was told, you have to put a call through to this person this weekend. It shouldn't go beyond this weekend. Nobody knew anything was coming. You understand? Nobody knew what she shared yesterday was coming. But what we knew was that there were flanks that she had left open, and she needed to cover them. And that weekend, I mean, when she was telling me, she came under a lot of pressure. She had to deal with herself that this weekend can't pass. I must talk anyhow. I mean, she was fearful. She was. I said, if you like, fast and pray, but you must call this person. That call to that person was so strategic. It turned out that every other thing became like a roller coaster. What if she didn't talk to that person? What if Joseph hadn't spoken? You understand? He would have been in that prison for long. He would have been in that prison for long because there would have been nobody to mention his name. Nobody.
Yeah.
There would have been nobody before Pharaoh to mention his name. Except perhaps at that time, they now decide to broadcast it to tell everybody that, well, Pharaoh is in this kind of mess and all of that. And the kind of thing that happened is not the kind of thing Pharaoh himself wants to broadcast, because he was going to paint his entire government in bad light. That means with all the people that you know, as we call them here, all your marabouts and stuff like that, you mean you cannot, you can't get the interpretation to this dream? Pharaoh also doesn't want to weaken his own power by letting everybody know that, you know, there's a dream that he had and he doesn't have anybody within his immediate circle that could. So when it was great for them to have somebody within the palace who was able to say, I know one man. This is where the man is. So go and get us that man now. So I think that is one of the strongest points to take away. That you ask yourself, what made this man even mention it? And you see, the reason why this thing is very important for us to learn from is that if you and I were in that situation, you know, one of the reasons we will not talk, which is afflicting us today. Yes, one of the reasons we will not talk is that we will look as if we are trying to get help now that we have helped them.
That's true.
That's true. That's
true. And it's
one of our greatest wrongdoing. That because I've just said, they say this, I've just helped him. Is that the reason I helped him? Did the person say so? If you don't ask that day, are you going to, is it the next day you are going to ask? Because nobody knew when they were going to call them. Nobody knew when Pharaoh was going to call. What if Pharaoh called them, you know, and you are going to wait till the next day, Pharaoh called them that night? You would have lost the opportunity. And some would never ask. They say, I just did it. You know, I just did it for God. I did it for God. They say, I did it for God. Who did Joseph do it for? He did it for God. He did it for the people, for the lives of the people. And we are not told that what he did was wrong. If we were told that what he did was wrong, then we would learn from it. Some people will tell you, I've had some people try to interpret and say that, well, the reason it was forgotten was because God will not share his glory with another person. I don't know whether, you know, if it wasn't appropriate, we would know something will happen that will make it clear to us that this is not the right thing to do. So at times you have to ask. And I remember what, you know, one of my bosses used to say many years ago. You know, he says the right of way is not given, it is taken. The right of way. If you are waiting for somebody to give you, you will wait for long. It's not given. So you have to take it. And that's the initiative that Joseph took. That's the initiative he took. That's what, you know, he had to do that. And of course, when you look at what he asked, he didn't even make it look as if what he was asking had anything to do with what he had done for them. He said, please remember me when it is well with you. That is when this whole thing blows over. Please remember that you left your friend here. I need help to get me out of here, please. When he could have made it conditional. What if he made it conditional? You know, what if he made it conditional? Because he was sure that he could interpret the dream. It was his area of expertise. He was very sure. But that's the one that wouldn't have been appropriate, because then you would have been holding the people to ransom. And that's what you must not do. All right. Do we have any other contribution? Let's go on to deal with the subject matter of today. Go into the general session. Do we have any other contributions, please? Any other contributions? Any other contributions? Okay, let's quickly go through our last set of stuff that we'll be covering today. And today is checkmating your biggest obstacle. Biggest obstacle to your asking. What's holding you back from asking? What's holding you back from asking? What's holding you back from asking? What's the biggest obstacle? There are two things that I'd like for us to bear in mind. Two things are very important. Developing the asking skill, developing strong character. They are not independent of each other. They are very, very related. Oh yes, Tunji, you are right. A little joke in Nigeria, the right of way is not given, it is taken. That's correct. That's why if you approach a roundabout in Nigeria, don't do it as if you're in Canada, because the person who has the right of way is the wrong person. You're right. Okay, so, there's something that we must bear in mind. When it comes to being effective, all right, in the exercise of principle. And it is, something very instructive. There's a way that I would say the competence, of Jesus is described in John chapter 1. He said, we beheld his glory full of grace and truth. So it wasn't full of truth alone, it was full of grace. All right? It wasn't full of truth alone, it was grace and truth. All right? Truth is what you know. Truth. But truth is not enough. In terms of getting the result that truth promises, you need the ability as well. And that's skill, that's grace. There is the skill for exercising the truth. You can know truth, but you don't know how to implement it. You are not skilled at carrying it out in a way that the promise of truth will be realized. I think it's something that is pretty profound. So it's not enough to know to ask. You need to develop the skill to know how to ask in a way that you get results. Ask how to ask in a way that consistently you realize the promise that that principle offers. Remember that we did say that that principle does not make provision for us to get no as an answer. But if you must get yes consistently, it's not enough to know the truth, which is the principle, and how we know how it works. It's important to be able to apply it, to get the results, to get the yes as often as you can, until you get to a point where every time you ask, you know that you're going to get. And that's not a point that is far-fetched. Remember also yesterday what we saw, that there are some people, they say, while before they ask, I will hear. So they have not even voiced their needs. And the one they want to ask from says, I will hear. I can anticipate their needs. And while they are still speaking it, while they are still making their request, while they are still presenting their petition, I will answer. I will put their needs before them. We looked at some of the things that you need to do to get yourself into that place. And those are some of the ways you become skillful as you implement those things. They are the ways you become skillful, They are the ways you build your capacity. to leverage this. But I want to talk about what the biggest obstacle is. And the biggest obstacle is pride. The biggest obstacle is pride. It's pride. Many are not comfortable asking because of how they believe, because of what they believe, the signal, the message they'll be passing by subjecting themselves or submitting themselves to that very act. And do you know that one of the, perhaps the biggest reason that God rebuffs anyone that asks or that prays is pride? What do I mean? He rejects the proud. He draws near the humble. He resists the proud. He embraces the humble. You know, God is not the only one who does that. You and I do that daily. We do that. No, it's the reason why I always find it, funny when we think that some of the things that God is asking, they are different from the things we do. They are the same things we do. Once we get a sense that someone is proud, I mean, how many times do you give something to somebody that you know this is an act of pride? You will hold back. You will conclude that those people are not worth it. You say this one is too proud, he's too arrogant, he's too full of himself. And they won't get what you otherwise would have given them. Some will say, oh, wait a minute, but I think that it is faith that is the more important thing. Why are we talking about pride? This might shock you, but the lack of faith is an expression of pride. A lack of faith is an expression of pride. Let's look at it this way. If you look at Hebrews 11 and verse 6, it says that whoever comes to God must believe that he is. He said, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So what is the faith? If you come to him, you must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him diligently. But we have said seek, ask, knock. They are the same thing, have we? Ask. They only vary in intensity. So what are we saying? We said you have faith. If you come to God, you believe that he is, and you believe that he rewards those who ask from him. Okay? So if you believe that he rewards those who ask, why are you not asking? You can't say you believe in something and you are not doing it. You believe that when you ask, you will receive. You believe that when I ask a man, I will receive. When I ask God, I will receive. But you are not asking. So why are you not asking? Is it that you are self-sufficient, or is it that you have no need? All of us know that you have a need. We know you have a need. So you can't pretend that you don't have any need. Everyone has a need. And you know that ask is what has been provided as the access to your need. I said ask is the bridge between your lack and your supply. Ask. It is the bridge that moves you from need to supply. So if faith is that you believe that those who ask God, he supplies their needs, your expression of faith is that you must be asking. So if you are not asking, it means you don't believe. And why would you not believe when the word says that's what you need to do? That's an act of pride. Why would you not believe when God has spoken? Why would you not believe when a man has told you, if you plant a seed, this is what you get, and you see daily that people plant seeds and they get what he has spoken? Why would you not believe? It's an act of pride. It's an expression of pride. It's an expression of pride. I wish we knew a lot more about what pride is. And wherever, another way to look at it, maybe because I'm a bit of a mathematician, if you like, anywhere you find pride, there is no love. Okay? Why? The Bible tells us that love is not proud. So wherever you see pride, love is not present there. But guess what? When love is not present, scarcely would you find faith. Scarcely would you find faith. So, because people push back the proud, you see the reason why the proud cannot get what they ask for. You see the reason? And pride is a major character challenge. When you see pride, you are talking character. So character can prevent you from being effective in the use of this privilege in your quest to unlock the power of ask. So I call pride the pullback factor, because it prevents you from exercising that privilege. And look at, these are some of the things that you find as practical expressions of the pride we're talking about. You find people who are in need and they are not asking. They have a need and they're asking nobody. They have needs, but they will never ask. Some opt to endure the lack. It's not that they don't want to ask. They are thinking that the need will blow over. That is just for the moment. That is transient. All right? This thing is going to be over. And so they won't ask. It's not as if there isn't help, but they just want to be able to, just stay there on their own Some avoid those who can help them. We have seen the case that some people could have been in Joseph's shoes and they would have helped those fellows, knowing that they came from Pharaoh, and they would not mention anything. In fact, if those people now will be asking, now that you have done this for us, what can we do? Is there anything we can do when we get back to Pharaoh? Is there anything we can? And Joseph will be running away from them because he doesn't want to be seen as asking for a favor. Some want to opt out. They opt to sort out things by themselves. And we have seen that when there is a lack, the help will come not from you. It has to come from somebody else. It has to come from elsewhere. And you have some that dictate when they lack. All right? They want certain kind of help, not just any help. Again, that's part of the problem. There's a way they want the help to come. Just like sometimes when you and I pray, there's a way we expect we would like God to supply the answer. That's how we deal. Look at some of the expressions further. They don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to look beggarly. They don't want other people thinking that they don't have. Some don't want you to know they don't have. They are projecting, an image that, if this man now knows that I'm asking for this thing, how will he see me? They had been living a lie. Some don't want to ask from those who they believe I should be the one helping you, not you helping me. Can you imagine? Is that not an act of pride? Some don't want others to look down on them. Some don't feel that they should ask before people help. Do you know that's another dimension of pride? Is it now waiting for me until I ask? Should he not know that I need help? How will he know? And what if he knows? Are you not the one needing help? Pride. It stops, people from. Biola, I'm going to answer that question. Let me make a bit of progress here so I can round up this session. All right. So at times you ask with pride instead of faith. That's the other side. You ask with pride. This pride you ask is like entitlement. After all, maybe I've helped him before. So is it too, what am I doing wrong now? Is it too wrong to ask him for help? Yes, it's not wrong to ask him for help. It's how you go about doing it. You ask with the entitlement mentality. When the Bible tells us that you should give and it shall be given to you, it didn't tell you that the way it will be given to you is by you engaging an entitlement mentality or attitude. All right. Now notice this is different from the entitlement we discussed on the second day. That has to do with you convincing yourself and providing justification in support of what you're asking for. It is not beating your chest and saying that for whatever reason it must help me because it's obvious. And that's the kind of thing that happened with John the Baptist, by the way. Because John the Baptist, the fact that he had already introduced Jesus when he was in prison, he sent his disciples to Jesus to go and ask them, "Sir, are you sure you are the one that we are waiting for? Because I can't be suffering in prison now and you're not doing anything. It can't be that it is the same person that I announced, that he knows that I'm in prison and he's just going around preaching. He's not even making any effort to help me." And Jesus sent them back. In fact, Jesus didn't answer them initially. He just kept on doing his work, healing people, preaching and all that. And when he had done, he told the disciple, John's disciple, he said, go back and tell him what you have seen. All right? That the blind see, that the lame are walking. And those who need to hear the word, they are hearing it. He said that, but tell him that blessed are they who are not offended in me. That is, they are blessed if they don't have an entitlement mentality. The fact that you are the one that introduced me, so what? If you're going to ask, you can ask. You don't have to put that ahead because that spoils your case instead of helping it. Okay. So your character is important, ladies and gentlemen. Your character is important. You ask according to who you are. You ask according to who you are. So if you are looking for a way to boost your skill, your capacity to ask, you have to look at character. There's a double-edged thing. When your character is weak, it breeds lack. It breeds lack. When your character, part of the weakness of character is pride. And we can see how that becomes a problem. Part of the weakness of character is lack of patience. People who are hasty, they want to get things done very quickly. And we understand that when you adopt that disposition, you won't be innocent. You're likely to do some things that are unacceptable. And you will create problems because people who should help you will not want to help you. All right? So some of those weak character attributes are pride, impatience, fear, indiscipline. But strong character, on the other hand, empowers you to ask. And what are those other attributes? We've heard the righteous are bold as a lion. So you are emboldened to ask. Those who are upright, who know they have no skeleton in their cupboard, who know they have been sincere in their dealings with others, who know that they are not frivolous in what they want to ask for. They are bold to step forward to ask. Or they are bolder, since it's a comparison. And they ask in faith. We are told, ask in faith, don't waver. A double-minded person should not expect to receive anything from God, and certainly not from man. People won't give you something when they sense that you don't trust them. They won't give you something when they sense that they are an option. That is, you've come to me, but you make it look as if I don't give you, you can get it from elsewhere. What am I going to do? I will leave you to go and get it elsewhere. A double-minded person. A double-minded person. So these things don't apply to God alone, all right? There are things we do every day. And we can learn from that if we want to be effective in getting things from God himself. And so those are some of the character attributes: humility, patience, faith or confidence, and discipline. So when you look at your asking experience, whether how people react to you, and why you are not able to leverage this privilege, you might be pointing to character gaps that you need to address. So once you get to the point that you start doing it, all right, you have that change of mindset and you say, look, so much this man has said in these 5 days, I have to step out. I've been missing too much. Watch out in your experiences for what kind of successes or failures you encounter. Because I guarantee you there will be successes, there will be failures. Why? That's how it is. You have to keep practicing, all right, and improving. That's how skill is developed. Okay? But as you are experiencing failures, you should look inwards because it may well be pointing at character gaps. They may be the reasons why you're having those experiences. There may be the reasons why you're having those experiences. Now, I've said this a couple of times before now, that there is this, the discipline where you commit to ask. Think about the various things that we have discussed. Think about the things, those 7 dimensions. Think about the things that you are supposed to be mindful of, so that you can take full advantage of this privilege. As you commit to it, as you learn to do it better, it teaches you to live a disciplined life. It teaches you to live a disciplined life. And those who live a disciplined life are those who are striving for mastery. So you want to be a master in asking. It's worthwhile. It's something you should commit yourself to. You've seen the benefits. You've seen what you have lost thus far. There are rules to abide by. And committing to following rules is what discipline is all about. So I listed 7 areas where this will help you. 1, a disciplined execution. Because you understand what the ask completely entails. You know it goes beyond just asking. You know the things to check. All right. You know the kind of preparation to make before you ask. So you don't rush to do things. You are not spontaneous. All right, because there is a process. And so you find that you begin to live a life that commits to process, that shows respect for process. The second is disciplined thought. Your thought process is being shaped as well by that process, by the things that you need to check. I'm almost certain that you would look at that word ask and the action that it portends or projects completely differently from the way you were looking at it on Sunday. Haven't gone through 5 days now. You won't see ask as ask again. You won't be seeing ask as just ASK again. There's a way you think about that word ask, and it goes far beyond what the ordinary person will think about it. The other thing is disciplined patience. Because one of the things that we have learned is that you need to be patient. Asking doesn't mean you have to get it now. If it requires faith, be rest assured that patience is required. So let us be like those who with faith and patience obtain the promise. So count it all joy when you face diverse needs. Said, for the trying of your faith works patience. Let patience have its full work so that you can be perfect and entire and complete, wanting nothing. So you want to learn patience. You want to live with patience as you should. When you commit to asking, it helps you greatly in that regard. Persistence is what we have talked about consistently. Importunity is the other word for it. We still mentioned it today. You want somebody to remember you, you have to keep knocking the door. You have to keep seeking. You have to let them know that you have expectations. All right, you are waiting to hear from them, that you have not traded off what you requested, and you are not willing to or ready to do it anytime soon. Faith is important. Confidence, conviction. All right, being sure that what you ask, you're able to get. This helps you to live a life of faith. Look, we're even talking about pride. I mean, see how faith comes in, which is not the way we typically see it. People seldom associate, faith and pride. But that's what it is. That's the truth. We have seen character. And we have seen that there is a fight to this, because the persistence issue, gives your asking business. It positions you to be ready to fight for what you're asking for. So you are not one to easily give up like you have been doing before. You are not one to be intimidated. You are not one to look for excuses, all right, to explain failures or inability to receive what you ask. And that's a discipline. As you would find with a soldier, the average soldier is not looking to be defeated by any means. All right, I'm going to skip the leadership issue. I've spoken about it yesterday, but let me just finish by simply talking briefly about how to build your asking capacity. And I'll just mention the things that you need to do. Grow in your servant status. The more you serve or you're committed to serve, the easier it will be for you to ask for things and to get it. Grow in your giving status. We have seen that again today from the Joseph example that we have discussed. You should leverage goodwill that you inherited. You see, some of us have inherited goodwill and we're not using it. We can ask for certain things because some other people have done the work on our behalf. All right? Some other people have done the work on our behalf. Jehoshaphat, when you look at him, when he ran to, ask God for help, he was drawing on the goodwill of his father, the prayer that his father had held. In John 17, Jesus said he was praying for the 12. He said, but I'm not praying for the 12 alone. I'm praying for everyone who will become a disciple through their work. He said, so this prayer, I am depositing goodwill that they can draw on. And practically, there are goodwill that you and I can draw on that we didn't earn directly, that was earned through others. It could even be goodwill from our leader, but something that our leader did, but people know that that's the person we worked with. And so when we ask, they're looking at him in order to give us what we ask. They're not looking at us. Think about it. You'll be amazed that you have those things and you have access to them, but you haven't used them. And they're available for use. They build your capacity to ask. I want to say here, leverage prophetic grace. There are some situations where you have a revelation or you have a word, just like Mary had, just like David had, just like Peter had. God told Peter, upon this rock I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. That's a prophetic word. So he can draw on it to ask. He told David, he said to David, sorry, just a moment, please. All right. So he said to David, he said, look, he said that he was going to, he sent the prophet to David and told David, that he was going to, that was going to make David retain the throne, and he would ensure that his seed retained the throne even after he was gone. And David went to pray and said to God, what you said you would do, do it. All right. That's drawing on prophetic gaze. When he said to Mary, say, you're going to have a son. All right. Mary said, let it be unto me according to your, your purpose, to how you have proposed it. So, there are certain times that you have a word, all right, of promise, and you can take advantage of that by leveraging them to ask. You should note your track record as well, because the more successful you are, the more you get results. It means that you're growing in your skill, in your capacity to ask. You are doing more things right than you are doing wrong. So take note. When Jesus was dealing with the case of Lazarus, you know what he said? He said, Father, I thank you because I know you hear me always, but I'm praying not because of me, because of all these people, because I know, that I have a track record with you. I know how to get these things done. All right. You have taught me how to get these things done. And this is the point that I said Olumide preempted. Make concrete contracts. All right. Make your terms clear. There are some situations, some contracts, will give you the privilege and the right to ask. Make sure that you firm them up ahead of when you need to exercise them, so that there is no, hearsay, or so that there is no gainsaying. So there is no gainsaying. And situations like that we have talked about, the case of David, always prepare well. Don't ask avoid spontaneous requests. All right. Though you should be sensitive to opportunities. Some opportunities will present themselves, yes, the need is there. You simply recognize them. And of course, when you are used to using some of these, yardsticks and dimensions that we have talked about, when an opportunity is rife and when it is not. All right. But you need to be sensitive. And in some cases, some people need they need a character, what I call a character fast, that the adjustment you need to make is in your character, not in any other thing. Get into the inner circle. This has to do with leadership. When you're with a leader, try and put yourself in a position of John, of James, of Peter. Because guess what? The others used to look up to them to be the ones to ask on their behalf. And these were people who used to ask and they always received from their leader, always received. They were never turned down. All right, that tells us something. It talks about relationship, it talks about, where they put themselves with their bosses or their leaders, and it served them well. It did serve them very well, okay? Mind and use your gift. I don't think I need to say anything more there than I have said on while we were discussing Joseph. We saw the significance of the gift, in that example. Focus on your leader. I think the point here is this: the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. A lot of the needs that you have, if you have a leader, they will be instrumental to providing it. And I'd like, when you go through this, please read this Jeremiah 23 and verse 4. You see what a leader is expected to do and how that a leader can be a great source for meeting our needs. Be diligent always. Do you see a man who is diligent in his duty? He will stand before kings. Joseph ended up standing before kings. When you stand before kings, what do? You don't go there to tell stories. Where standing before kings is an opportunity. That's when you say, that's when you have the privilege. What do you want me to do for you? You know, what do you want me to do for you? That's what kings usually, say. They like to show you that the blessing is meant to go from them to you, and whatever gets you, particularly if great character attributes get you into their presence, is an opportunity to ask. Be sensitive always, okay? When you are brought before great men, you are given the privilege to ask and to receive big. That's not where you go and you are trying to play down yourself. All right. We have seen enough examples. We have seen enough examples. So, ladies and gentlemen, with your kind permission, I'd like to draw the curtain to this program here. Remember what we called it, the ask the 3-letter word, guaranteed to change your life. I hope you have found out how. And I hope we have lived true to the promise. As you must have seen, still, every lack is rooted in a fundamental lack, and that lack is wisdom. And all that we have described and shared is the wisdom about how to receive supply for your lack, how to move yourself into a new phase and realm of life where you have all that you need to have all your needs met. So ask to stop faltering, to stop failing, and to stop falling. Ask to stop lacking. So thank you very much. Let me stop here and give you an opportunity to make a few comments or to ask any questions so that we can wrap up the challenge. After, a few comments, I'd like to make 1 or 2 statements and to close on that basis. So you have the floor. You have the floor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, personally, I want to thank you for this session because it has changed, what will I say? Maybe my entire psyche about asking. Everything about asking. And yesterday morning, I got up, I was thinking, okay, what do I ask now? This morning, I started to see my bosses differently. That, okay,
yeah,
what does this person have that I can ask for? And I'm beginning to see those virtues and those things in them that I can ask. So I've gone a step further to now ask myself at the end of every day, what have I asked now of myself and of the people I work with? So I want to thank you very much, sir. This has been a life-changing experience for me. And so I'm seeing myself differently. And hopefully in the next few months ahead, I think I should come back with testimonies too.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you very much. That's encouraging. All right. Let's have any more comments.
Hello, Dr. Shobodu. Good morning,
yes, sir.
Sorry, good afternoon, staff.
Well, don't worry. We can understand your axis.
The Lord bless you so mightily, sir. It's awesome. Honestly, I've been taking in every bit of the presentation, and sincerely, I saw a very clear picture of myself, and areas where I had actually made a lot of mistakes in this particular, in this area.
Yes.
And I think on the second day, on the second day, I was so inspired that there had been, this thing I have been thinking about of asking, someone. And, I was deliberating on, will this be possible? Will this person be able to meet with this request? But by the second day of this this program, I was just inspired. I said, look, I mean, if I have taken anything from this, this program, I think I should take, a step towards actually seeing if this thing would actually work. And so that same day, I immediately, sent that request through. And funny enough, I was expecting, a negative response. I was expecting an immediate negative response.
Wow.
But I discovered that it was in actual fact, the response was I was shocked, honestly. And it now dawned on me that, wow, I think the issue of timidity is a major factor in, that's so preventing a lot of people from taking the bold step of asking. Honestly, I want to thank you, Doctor. And for me, I want to say to you that honestly, this program was packaged for me personally, and I know it's going to really help me to put a lot of things right, and to be bold enough, and to be constructive enough to ask when I should ask. And thank you also for coming up with the skills of asking. There's always a skill to most of these things. And thank you so much for opening our eyes to these things that are quite, they look so impossible, so difficult, so big, but honestly, it's as simple as ask. As simple as ask. So that's the watchword for me. It's as simple as ask. So, Doctor, I want to thank you so much, sir. God bless you, sir. And I trust God that God will grant you more wisdom. I'll be waiting for the next program, the next inspiring program by the grace of God. Thank you so much. God bless you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm okay, but please don't go yet. You will hear,
Okay,
what I'm going to, yeah.
Okay, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. Who else is speaking? Who else is speaking? Chiso, are you there? Biola, are you there?
Yeah. I was just going to say, today's takeaway majorly, for me, were the things that you were reiterating to us, and I'm seeing the new life. And it's like grace is a required skill for a productive ask. The lack of faith is expressed in pride. You don't ask. Ask is the bridge between your need and the answer. Love lives far from pride. And those were major takeaways from me. I had an opportunity to have had a snippet of ask before we had this program. And immediately, because I'm one person that do not ask. And just like Harry said, ask, you are just a 3-letter word from your major breakthrough. And it's just simply ask. And I took it further, you understand? I'm not being timid, you understand? Don't start helping somebody to think what they have not said. So I made it an ask. And that ask was not good enough. It was taken care of. And I thought, do I dare go back and ask? And, that was day before yesterday. I was thinking that I have made an ask and was taken, but I didn't ask powerfully. I didn't prepare very well for my ask.
Yes.
I didn't ask for exactly what will take care of my pleasures and my needs. And the little I asked was given to me. But this is the same person who can solve the problem that I still have. And I went back again to ask. And amazingly, I now ask the ridiculous. And I indeed got the miraculous. I am telling you. What I now did ask for was so large. And I didn't bother thinking, it's not my responsibility to be checking whether the bigness or the magnitude. It's clearly said, whosoever ask,
Mhm.
even Elijah, you understand, said,
Yes.
listen, this that you have asked is big. How?
Yes.
Nevertheless.
Yes.
So
You
if
will
I'm
still
going
get
to
it.
be given a condition for
Yes.
the magnitude of my ask, I was ready for it. And you know, and it was mind-blowing. In fact, it shattered, and this has been a problem for me for the past since December. I've been traumatized by this ask. And I could have solved all of my problems from December. And so I'm just so grateful. I was dancing in the moon. And another thing that I took away is that you have a
Sorry,
right.
I want to re-echo one thing you mentioned. I love that quote. He said, "You asked for the ridiculous, and
I
you
got the
got the
miraculous.
miraculous."
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
All right.
It was
All
like a
right.
miracle. I didn't even
Yeah.
think that could
Yeah. Yeah.
happen.
It's good.
You know,
It's good.
I'm one of those people that will not do. I think it's our culture because I think ask has been abused. Even when I know that what I need is in the hand of whom I have helped, I will just
Yes.
keep my mouth shut. I will never ask.
Yeah.
And the person is there to ask. So I'm so grateful that all of those weights that I put on myself, they've been lifted. My ignorance has been lifted in many
And their
ways.
weights, their
And
weights
thank you.
indeed.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. God bless you.
Thank you. There. Yeah. I mean, I love that. There are weights indeed. When you put obstacles on your own way, when you put weights on your own shoulders that you can't justify other than the fact that, you are the one thinking about what is not, and I guess that's what, that's what access to wisdom does. That's what access to light and truth, that's what it does, for you. It just helps you to clear the way, to lift these weights, and then you see yourself able to run faster. That's why, we said what you have will change your life. That singular thing, is enough to give you the quality of life that you need. If only you could ask. If only you could ask. Thank you very much, Biola, for that. Chiso, are you there? Hello, is Chiso there? All right, who else wants to speak? Ola Adiolua, any comments from you? Tunji, any comments? Is Tunji still here? All right, Tunji should speak. Namesake, any comment from you? Hello? Okay, maybe they are not. They are not. Okay, so once again, thank you very much for all your comments. I want to ask you for 2 favors. And I will share with you the way this was meant to pan out. And this is an inaugural, challenge. This is an inaugural set. I want to thank every one of you for giving me and giving us. Like I said, my wife is on the platform as well. She's a co-founder at Emet Leadership Academy. Giving us the opportunity to launch this challenge. All that has transpired and all that you have said have proven to us that, God had a purpose why he wanted us to embark on this. And why, this is so fundamental, so instructive, has a potential to transform and to change lives. And why we should just sustain it as an instrument for affecting the lives of people. It has been a learning experience, for me as well. And I believe by the grace of God, it can only get better. And we are pleased because even over the course of the 5 days, there are already practical moves that you have made to begin to act out the learning experience, and you're already beginning to even get results. So it's very encouraging. Now, the way that this was planned is that this challenge, I probably have gone into more detail than I would ordinarily go, but even at that, there is a lot more to still learn, as you probably would have seen. If you sit down to review the materials, if you sit down to go through what we have done, you would know that, there is still much more, to drill down to, that can be covered surely in 5 days. And so this was to provide an opportunity, to how do I put it, encourage those who attend to consider a more hands-on program. And what are those hands-on programs? There are 2 of them. And one is what we call the Ask Mastery Bootcamp. The Ask Mastery Bootcamp. And it's intended to be like a 3-month, program where we can drill down, take our time. As you can see, a number of things, I had to skip on. I couldn't go into detail, and there are things that we didn't even talk about at all, and they're relevant, for this purpose. The idea is that you would have seen the importance of these things, and, those who want to take it a step further, will take advantage of the Ask Mastery Bootcamp. It will be a 3-month program where we would work in greater detail together over the course of 3 months, after which you can truly beat your chest that, yes, from now, I would be very much on top of my game. So that's an option. Unfortunately, I have not, truth be told, I haven't completed the website, for that. So I would crave your indulgence to send you a notice on that once it is done, so that you can have, the fine details of what it would entail in terms of content, in terms of focus, in terms of, how much of your time it will take and when it will hold, and in terms of cost. The other one is what we call the Greater Than Solomon Mastermind. The Greater Than Solomon Mastermind. What's the idea behind that? One of the things we said here is that wisdom is really the key. Okay? But wisdom, we all associate it so much with Solomon. And we call him the wisest man. Solomon isn't the wisest man. Solomon isn't wiser than Jesus, wasn't wiser than Jesus. And when Jesus came, Jesus introduced himself. He said, a greater than Solomon is here. And so the idea is to have that mastermind where we are able to expose a greater than Solomon dimension of wisdom. What's the greater than Solomon dimension of wisdom? We know that with the wisdom that Solomon had, he still got into trouble. He still messed up. All right? Despite that God warned him and all of that. But Jesus didn't mess up. He faced all the challenges, like Solomon faced. And we're told in Hebrews 4:14 and 15, that he did not sin. That was because he was operating at a higher frequency of wisdom than that of Solomon. Otherwise, the wisdom of Solomon is susceptible it's weak in a regard. And so if we're to learn, we should learn the greater than Solomon order of wisdom. Now that, of course, will strengthen you even further with your ask. With your ask. All right. And, so those are two programs. I think we have a website already for that. I will share that with you as well, for those who may be interested. So going forward, when we have these challenges, the idea would be after the 5 days, to encourage people to work with us on either of the Ask Mastery Bootcamp or the Greater Than Solomon Mastermind. That's how we intend to proceed from here. So if you are interested, be on the lookout. We will send you the details maybe over the course of the coming week, and then we can discuss with you further. My last request would be, we want to run this challenge on monthly basis. So I want to crave your indulgence that as many as believe that this is worthwhile for people to attend, we would appreciate if you would be our ambassadors, and if you will speak to others about these programs, we would update our sites and put on a new set of dates for March. And please, we would appreciate if you can introduce people or bring people to come and join. For everyone who brings people, you can join for free. You can join for free, again next month. And then, of course, that those who register for VIP, you can become an affiliate. The affiliate gives you access to earn, I think is 50%, of whatever anyone who registers through you pays. So you can, while you're attending, you can also be making money for yourself. All we do is to generate a link for you, and your link will be what others use to register for the program. So you get your 50% commission automatically. So that's it. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for investing in this program. Thank you for patronizing Emet Leadership Academy. We are grateful for the opportunity to be used of God to, affect your lives, for good. And what we know, like I said, is that what we teach is guaranteed to deliver, not because we say so, but because we teach principles of God that have been tried and tested over more than 2,000 years. That's our source of confidence, and we remain excited doing what he has called us to do. So once again, thank you and thank you and thank you. It's been a pleasure leading the discussion, and I've learned from virtually everyone, on behalf of my wife and myself and Emet Leadership Academy. We're grateful that you attended. We'll stay in touch, and we'll look forward to you introducing more people to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ryan. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chisel.
Thank
you,
Thank
Mama.
You,
Mommy is supposed to show her holy face. She gave us a glimpse. And
Okay,
then she went off here.
Ronke, you can show your face.
She actually did. And then she went off. Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you, Tunji. And nice being on this platform with you.
Okay, her face is there now. She can see her face.
Good evening, Ma.
Good evening, Ma.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again
Bye.
next month.
All right. Thank you,
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Shobu,
Bye-bye.
Dr. Mrs. Shobodu. God bless you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you,
sir.
sir.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
More testimonies.
Amen.
Amen.
No.
Amen. 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 Amen.
Thank you all. Bye.